Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the SU election president debate. I'm really excited to have everyone here and for you to meet the amazing candidates we've got today. We've got Mark, Alexandru, Samira, and Kieron, and they're going to be answering some of the questions. First, they have a minute to introduce themselves with what they're studying, who they are, what their name is, and what year they're in. So, Alexandru, would you like to go first and answer those questions?
Definitely. Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. So, hello, everyone. My name is Alex, and sadly, I don't have a year of study anymore. I graduated from Essex, but I'm still working to make sure you get the chance of a work experience. And for those of you who might not know me and are watching, I'm the current VP International, or the smiley guy in the meetings who seeks to represent our international communities and ensure the best interest for our international students.
Thank you very much. Kieron, would you like to go next?
Yep, sure. I'm Kieron Franks, a second year student of philosophy, politics and economics. Bit of a mouthful, to be honest. I'm a president of the Liberal Democrat Society and just involved in the politics convene a bit more generally.
Excellent. Mark, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark. I use pronouns he, him. I'm your current Vice President Education. Like Alex, I've graduated. I've studied a BA in politics, and I'm running to be your next SU president.
Excellent. Samira?
Hi everyone, I hope you're having a good evening. My name's Samira, I'm a third year student on the Colchester campus and I'm currently studying a BA in Politics and International Relations. I go by the pronouns she, her, and I wish there were subtitles to make it a bit more inclusive, but yeah, looking forward to the debate.
Thank you, Samira. Now up next, there's two questions that our candidates have been able to prepare for. They've got 2 minutes to answer each question and the orders will be different each time. Mark, what do you think you would bring to the role of president?
Thanks, Joe. The role of president is to set a strategic direction, to work with students and to represent their needs. I've got experience as your current VP Education, leading the Students' Union in academic representation, challenging the university on fees, on educational matters and getting students' voice heard. We've removed the requirement for evidencing extenuating circumstances this year. We've got open book exams as a default going forward, and we've continued to pressure the university to make decisions earlier to give students clarity. For example, getting the way in which exams are going to be delivered confirmed back in term 1. I bring a vision of a union that puts its representational role first, continuing the fight against the marketisation of education and the fees we pay, challenging the landlords who profiteer at our expense and who provide subpar housing and accommodation, and continuing the pressure on the university to ensure that all students, regardless of background, are treated fairly and get the best education and experience they can get. Most importantly, I'm someone who listens. I really care about you and I want to know what you think. That's why I put together a survey which you can find on my Facebook page and in my manifesto, so I can hear all of your thoughts about what you think we should focus on as a students' union. I know the union isn't perfect, but I know that when we work together, we can do great things. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Samira, what would you bring to the role of president?
Thank you, Joe. I am a fresh face to the Students' Union. I've indirectly helped students throughout my 3 years and even placement students currently to, direct services that our Students' Union provide, which sometimes, as I said on my Facebook page, can be hard to navigate. Throughout my 3 years, even before, I've represented over 300,000 young people for 2 years of my local borough, Brent, and I work as a young and youth consultant to the government. I've worked with local authorities and I currently have worked for 3 charities. And I think this is so important when, leading the strategy of the union. For me, I'm very solution-based and problem-solving. When there's an issue, such as making the issue more democratic, I have solutions-based, and I think it's very important. I am a current trustee at the Lighthouse Children's Care Home, so I understand what's going on nationally, locally as well, and cultures is something very close to my heart. As an estranged student, I feel representation is so important, and there are so many groups. There are current SEO student community officers roles that are still not filled, from our LGBTQ+, our women's, our Asian officer, and I think it's something so important to ensure that we have representation. So I'm coming with an inclusive, more transparent and diverse, but something who's wanting to listen, understand, and really represent you guys on a union level, but also on a national level, and using my connections that I have with other student unions.
Thank you, Samira. Now, Kieron, what would you bring to the role of president?
Hi, yeah, a bit like Samira, I'd like to start out by mentioning I don't have a ton of experience in past roles in the SU. And like Samira, I think that's a good thing. I'll go into a bit more into why later, but I think I will say that people who spent a lot of time in SU roles sometimes can miss some of the little issues that get ignored. As for why I think I've got the skills to run the SU, I have experience in both administration and campaigning, both of which are really important aspects of running a student union. I've been a campaigner for almost 7 years now. I started as a youth councillor in Doncaster, and I worked my way up to representing the 550,000 people of Yorkshire. As a teenager, to regional and national decision makers like MPs and the mayor of the Sheffield City region, Dan Jarvis, along with government departments such as the Department for Culture, Media and Sport and the Department for Education. I've since continued my advocacy work through my role as regional chair for the East of England, for my political party's youth wing. Some of the achievements in all of these roles include changing public transport policy in South Yorkshire and contributing to public policy regarding teaching basic life skills, continually showing how I stand up for the rights and well-being of young people. For administration, I'm also the secretary of my local political party in Colchester, as well as running a university society this year and founding one last year, all of which require significant ability in running more day-to-day tasks that are involved in running an organisation. Just beyond this, I think that my campaign has shown that I have a vision, a commitment for the SU to be more democratic and more representative. And being the third most diverse student body in the country, I think that's really important. And I have coherent and well thought out ideas on how we can achieve this. This SU needs to be more rebellious and proactive, and I think my skill set is the right one to achieve this.
Thank you, Kieron. Now, Alexandru, what would you bring to the role of president?
Sorry, I realized I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you, Joe. So as an individual who had the chance to already engage with our members and the inner workings of the SU and most of its departments, I will bring the energy and drive to fuel our union and restart the process of our student representation. Now, in a world where students will come first with every meeting, every council, every discussion with the university and every opportunity possible. Very much similar to what I did in my current position, I will ensure to lead the union with our students' best interests at heart, seeking to involve them with every occasion in the workings of the SU and represent them to the higher bodies which lead their education, i.e. the university and government. I will also bring a clear mind and vision of what needs to happen, say working next to our students and not above them in order to represent their needs. Often there's discussions on welfare opportunities necessary for our students to conduct their academic business. So I want to listen to their valuable input and hear how we can improve and address the current issues and facilitate solutions in order to boost their morale and help their experience in the joy of being a student at Essex. Finally, I'll bring the experience gathered of my journey from an international student to VP International in order to restart and mend the connection between our members and the SU, where my dedication will seek to make a difference and will drive my actions in order to remove the fog of uncertainty and help our students who for far too long have been dealing with this and start working together towards something we can all believe in. Better values for tuition fees, help with accommodation and rent, accessibility to learn and have your academic needs met, opportunities to develop, to make meaningful connections and to tackle loneliness and mental health issues, and finally to safeguard our students' safety and their interests, and overall restart the process of representation where students come first.
Thank you, Alexandru. And now the next question you're all going to be answering is what you think the biggest issue for students is right now. Samira, would you like to start off with this one?
Yeah, sure. That's a massive question. I think you can't pinpoint it to one, but I think the most obvious one for everyone is the whole pandemic. You know, the one thing that pandemic doesn't do is discriminate. And one of the factors is the fact that we're not getting the value of teaching that we're paying for, you know. Over 400,000 young people had casted their vote with 98% of your vote agreeing, you know, tuition fees, for example. And it's something that I feel like our university hasn't responded effectively and efficiently. So, and, you know, if elected as SU president, is something that I'm willing to work with also nationally to, you know, make government push universities and institutions to really listen to our students more. Another issue for me, I feel like with students, after speaking to societies and friends and placement students, is the fact that we're not integrated enough. You know, we've been robbed of our student experience and not felt of anyone else bar the pandemic. However, I feel like our university is so vast and big. We have students all over the world, you know, different time zones. Like, can they even access our debates today? Some people are waking up at 4 a.m. So I feel like we have Southend, we have East 15, we have Colchester. I think when it comes to student experience, integrating us 3 campuses all together, making us more united, because we're all fighting the same issue of the pandemic, our student experience, our education, but also minority groups. They're not being supported enough. And I am a minority student myself, and I haven't been supported. So I think some of those issues are just some of them, but there are so much more that as an SU president, you need to help and use strategy to really push forward.
Thank you, Samira. Now, Alexandru, what do you think the biggest issue is for students right now?
Thank you, Joe. So similar to what Samira said, it's difficult to pinpoint, but from all the discussions I had prior to and during my campaign with our members regarding representation, what are some of the biggest issues that they're currently dealing with, the one that was continuously highlighted was the alienation of our students from our SU union and university. Their trust in us as an organization that seeks to lead for the future of its members is fading. Of course, COVID had a big impact, but it was not the only one to blame in this case. All members have already started to deal with the stress of financial limitations, and the retaining job market possibilities did not make that easy, nor did the locked fees they had to pay for a year of online education. The lack of face-to-face education also started a chain of reactions where soon enough our members were dealing with loneliness, inability to make friends, lack of opportunity, and development and mental health issues. I feel for my fellow students who sought to start a new chapter of their life and sadly did not receive the promise of a better future. And when they needed us most, we did not manage to raise their expectations. Nowadays, what lingers most in the thoughts of our students is the uncertainty of the next day. Will I have money to pay my rent? Will I find a job before my family stops being able to support my student expenses? Will I manage to make any friends? Will I manage to be able to attend my classes next year? Will I find the will to carry on tomorrow? Will the university and SU come to our aid? Now, more than ever, I do believe we need to climb down from our ivory towers and ground ourselves next to our students and those who we represent. Our members at Essex University from Colchester, from Southend, from Loughton and East 15, and together start working in order to give them back their hope and rebuild their trust in us. And as a union, put its members at the top of its priority list.
Thank you, Alexandru. Now, Mark, what do you think the biggest issue students are facing right now?
Thanks, Joe. I think the biggest issue for students right now is value of university. Value is a huge issue for students, and I've had many conversations about the fact that university, you can only really complain and get refunds if your learning outcomes haven't been met. But this is something that's almost impossible to prove. The issue around value is the biggest issue for students because they have lost so many opportunities and options this year. There have been learning opportunities that have been lost because we aren't in person. Now, this isn't the fault of university, and that's why we've been pressuring central government to provide refunds for students, both home and international, as well as providing further support for students. But students have also lost placement years and years abroad, which is incredibly disappointing for so many students. There have been lost experience opportunities because of governmental regulation, and I think it should be a priority of the SU. But when it is safe for these to be resumed, they are. We need to keep up the pressure as well as exerting new pressure on landlords, provide rent rebates in private accommodation and ensure there's better value in accommodation both on and off campus. We pay so much for where we live and a lot of the time it is not worth that much. We need to come together and challenge this on a larger scale. There are thousands of us and we can use that to demand better. Ultimately, I think that the value of university is the biggest issue for all students right now, and I think we need to do more work on this.
You muted, Joe, sorry.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that. Kieron, what do you think the biggest issue is facing students right now?
Yeah, well, it might sound a bit of like repetition with other candidates here today talking about, but I think that the problems that students are facing this year and summarising them into just one big issue really misses the point about how complete the student experience is lacking. And it's not just this year, it's most years. The coronavirus has obviously created problems, but it's also exacerbated many that have existed for years. Students have been exploited by their landlords, experiencing excessive fees, lecturers not engaging them, students properly, and too little action against prejudice and discrimination. These are just really systemic problems that just aren't being tackled by successive sabbatical officers, and overall, they've just not stood up to the university well enough. All of it lies at the door of the SU and the way that it's being run at the moment. It is simply just too bureaucratic and too many decisions are out of the hand of students. The Education Act 1994 obligates students' unions to make sure that they are run in a fair and democratic manner, and I think this is something that they don't always live up to. Candidates in elections aren't allowed to run manifestos or call out other candidates when they say things and do things that aren't up to scratch. I'm not saying that anything against my fellow candidates here today, by the way. Or they can be prevented from running entirely. All of this just isn't in line with democracy and free speech. The SU says that the big plan is the ultimate expression of student will, but the process is less than transparent, and many students don't engage with it at all because they don't feel like things are going to change. So in fact, just one reason, and it might not be the one you would have expected at the beginning, democratization of the SU is the major issue that needs to be tackled if we are to save the student experience and our education. It's not something the SU legally needs to live up to, but it also something that student-run organisations should be committed to. It's all well and good saying that people will tackle issues if the way that the SU is run encourages maintaining the status quo.
Thank you, Kieron. Now, Kieron, I want you to answer this one first. It's really scary being a trans student at British universities right now. How should next year's president work to tackle transphobia on our campuses?
Being an LGBTQ student at all, and especially being a trans student, is one of the most scary things that could happen going into university, being surrounded by people that may not have supported you. But I think as president of the SU, I think there's a big culture change that needs to happen, a more supportive environment. People need to be able to feel that the SU will listen to them, and it's an issue that everyone faces in the community. So yeah, overall, I think just being more supportive.
Thank you, Kieron, for that answer. Now, Mark, could you answer the same question? It's really scary being a trans student at British universities right now. How should next year's president work to tackle transphobia on our campuses?
So thanks, Joe, and also thank you to whoever asked this question. I think it's really important that we challenge and tackle transphobia on our campuses. I'm not a member of the trans community and could never speak on their behalf. However, this is what I've learned from speaking to members of the trans community. I know there is transphobia from both academic staff, including misgendering and dead naming of our students, and from students, some of whom think that it's a joke. Let's be clear, transphobia isn't a joke, and we shouldn't be letting anyone get away with it. There is both active and passive transphobia on our campuses. Both forms harm the community, and we should be treating both with the same seriousness. We need to rethink and refocus our zero tolerance policy to ensure that we are truly zero tolerance with hate speech. Free speech is something that's important to me, and I know important to many other students. However, we cannot use free speech as a defence of speech that is hateful, harmful, and dangerous. Free speech isn't protection against criticism or consequences, and as an SU and a university, we should not be a platform to those who are known to make hateful, harmful, and dangerous comments that marginalise our communities on campus, and that includes transphobia. We need to apply pressure to the university to enforce their own policies around hate speech and make students feel safe to report events of transphobia as well as other forms of discrimination. Safe in the knowledge that there won't be recriminations and that there will be a response to the university. Our student leaders need to be at the forefront of tackling transphobia, and we must all stand up and say trans rights are human rights, and we must work tirelessly to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Alexandru, it's really scary being a trans student right now at British universities. How should next year's president work to tackle transphobia on our...
I hope it's not my internet, but thank you, Joe, for asking that, and for whoever asked this question. I similar to what my candidate said as well, I firmly believe this. First of all, the idea of transphobia should be challenged to all instances possible, and the students facing this should have the confidence to approach us, so we can work together in bringing better representation to the communities. I myself as well, I'm now a member of the LGBTQ+ and cannot speak for what they're feeling and what's happening. But what can I do is help raise their voices and make sure that they don't have to feel transphobia or this fear when they choose to come at Essex to study and get a better life. So regardless of your background or what's happening, please have the confidence to approach us in order to work with us in pressuring the university, the students' union, and laws which require to put more protection under your circumstances and hopefully help your experience here to become more valuable and as opportunities as all the others without the fear of being part of the LGBTQ population. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandru, for your answer. Samira, it's really scary being a trans student at British universities right now. How should our next year's president tackle transphobia on our campuses?
I can't, again, as the other two candidates said, speak on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community, but I hear you and I stand with you as an ally. I think it's so important when it comes to, you know, sexual harassment, but also hate crime, to really ensure that we have procedures in place within the Students' Union, but also within the university, within our teaching staff too, that we have effective, which frankly now we have inefficient and undemocratic procedures. Moving forward, I just think it's having an environment where students feel safe, you know, to commit to not commit a crime, but to mention a crime, you know, mention an incident that's happened. And I think it's also the fact that our wellbeing services, you know, what the next SU president needs to work very closely with the VP welfare to ensure that we have services tailored to students, tailored to different types of students too, but also the Essex sexual health. How are they approaching the language that we're using within our institutions, both from academic and students, raising awareness within our communities, within our societies and clubs, and making sports more inclusive for all of these groups. So in response to that, thank you for speaking up, and make sure you reach out to someone if you do want to make that clear that something's happened to you, because it is important to speak out, and there are so many other people which empathize with you. So yeah, all I can really say is that I hear you, I stand with you, and I want to be an ally with you and ensure that our university is a safe place, whether that's in the Colchester, East 15 or South End.
Thank you very much, Samira, for your answer. And the next question everyone's going to be answering is that as president, you're required to not only lead the SU, but also chair a trustee board and line manage a team of 7 officers, including a CEO. What personal skills do you believe you have that would make you good at these roles? Mark, would you like to answer this question first, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joe. So in terms of experience, I already sit on the trustee board as a VP, but crucially, the skills to line manage the 7 sabbatical officers. I think the crucial thing is again listening. Working together with the other sabbatical officers is absolutely vital, and making sure that their skills, their experiences, and their beliefs are used in the most effective way possible to actually have an effective students' union. I think it's all about working as a team. And I know I'm a team player, having worked as a team with 6 other sabbatical officers this year. But it's also about taking leadership, and honestly, it's all about telling the truth and making a stand where it's necessary. We are going to have to be setting a direction as a trustee board, and as a potential chair of that trustee board, I need to be the one who's got that vision. I've got that vision. My vision is that we put our representational role first. My vision is that we stand up for students on fees, on rent, and on fairness. And I think the only way we can do that effectively is if we do it as a team that works together. So yeah.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Samira, what do you have to say?
I think this is what excites me most about this role, is being able to use strategy, to really represent students' voices. I currently am a trustee, as I said before, in the Lighthouse, and as a young trustee, being able to, look over finances and look at the strategy of the whole charity itself as a massive organisation is some of the skills that I have. I've mentored young people, and I've actually delegated teams within the British Youth Council, and to me, being able to implement this within the Students' Union is quite exciting. And I think the massive thing is being able to not only be a listener, but a communicator, and a really good communicator, using different avenues to really engage with all our students, but also help the sabbatical officers and SEOs really push as personally as personal development, but within their roles. If something happens one day or a week where things are not going very, very much well, example, VP engagement with the whole pandemic, finding new innovative ways, pushing them to really go outside of their comfort zone is something that, again, excites me and I'm able to do, and I've done that in the past. Working with government, being able to flip the hat from being apolitical, impartial, sitting as a trustee and head trustee, you're going to have to able to do that, you know, put yourself outside and wear that head cap, but also representing students. I think being able to be impartial for my whole 3 years at university without having to join a society.
I'm all good.
I'm glad you're good, Zachary. But no, I think it's important, you know, that skill of being impartial and being able to flip roles, and just ensuring that there's good communication, and especially social media is something that I'm so excited again to use.
Thank you, Samira, for your answer. And I'd like to remind all participants to keep yourself muted and the videos off, just so this process can go smoothly. And every candidate has a fair amount of time. Now, Kieron, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, could I have it restated first, please, just to make sure I'm covering everything?
Of course, yeah. As president, you're required to not only lead the SU, but also chair the trustee board and line manage a team of 7 officers, including the CEO. What personal skills do you believe you have that would make you good at these roles?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was responsible for representing the 550,000 young people of South Yorkshire, and that requires a lot of delegating tasks, committee work, etc. And it's a skill that transfers quite easily across to an organisation like this. As Mark mentioned in his Democratic Review last year, there's a lot of ways that committees can be used to increase engagement with the SU, and I think making sure that the sparkle officers that I work with are maintaining those links with students is really important to me, and teamwork, as other candidates have said earlier, is majorly important, so that you don't try and make yourself heard over other people and kind of lose sight of what being a democratic organisation is about.
Thank you, Kieron, for your answer. Alexandru, would you like to go next?
Definitely. Thank you, Joe. So as part of our experience, during my time at the university, I've grown into positions of leadership, I would say, with the first opportunity to be elected president of a society, then moving forward to being a leader of a volunteering activity, to as an SU activity front runner, and then finally VP International. Now as VP International, I got the amazing opportunity to lead a team of students could become part and members of the running committee of the ISA, kind of similar to what would happen, say, should I be elected president. This allowed me to gain the confidence and experience to lead this group of people into making a difference and engaging with our students and giving them the freedom and ability to start launching by themselves. So without the need of leadership, so, but having the confidence to engage with the team. Similarly to then what I believe is the most proactive thing that would happen in that case would be for me to listen for our team members and give them the opportunity to say their fair chances and engage and go and also do their own stuff, which will make a difference on the longer run, rather than only acting on one voice. Minds, if they all come together, there's a bigger chance for something to happen for the better of all the whole community. Now, as a member of the trustee, I got the experience as such by starting this year, which I've been engaged with, and it's an interesting process where, as the others might have mentioned as well, you have to have this change of hats where you have to have the best interests of the union at heart, but also of the students. But there's definitely some bounds where you can find a balance between the two, and this is who I genuinely am, and this is what I've strived to be this year. Within all my works in the sub position and the trustee position, always try to make sure that students come first. And in that sense, I firmly believe I have the confidence and leadership necessary in order to lead the team, but also give them the opportunity to develop, because I'm also someone who always seeks to inspire those around me and give them the possibility to launch themselves and become their better selves. And in that sense, I'll then have also say that together we will also be able to liaise with the university, lead the students union, and work with the SU manager. Thank you.
You're muted again, Joe.
Thanks for letting me know, because that's all good, because the timer started going off. Right, Samira, the next question everyone's going to be answering is, how should the SU president make sure student parliament gets to play an active role in shaping the SU should they become the next year's leader? Samira, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think it's all about consultation, talking to students. I come from a year where there have been a lot of students that actually don't know what the SU is doing. Some of our friends didn't even know there wasn't a students' union parliament, for example. So there's a lot to do with engaging disengaged students, and that includes, again, minority students, minority communities, which is a massive thing that you'll find within university, but also outside of university in the workforce. You can't make a decision like that without consulting the students. But I think when it comes to consulting students, you have to keep updating them. You're going to have to keep responding to them and showing them the outcomes that are going on in different ways. In regards to that specific question, I think it's looking at reforming our parliament and reforming the way they also affect policy. How big of a part do they play? There are so many other positions that they need more representation on the parliament itself. So I think it's looking about what is working now, what is not working, and what can work in the future. I think we need to really look at post-COVID recovery of our union, and that includes having the consultation with Parliament itself and its members. So I think moving forward is looking at post-COVID strategy, consultation, but keeping up, and the consistency is a theme that I feel like our current university is lacking. So yeah, I hope that's answered the question.
Thank you, Samira. And now, Alexandru, you're next. How should the president make sure that student parliament gets to play an active role in shaping the SU should they become leader next year?
Thank you, Joe. So given that the student parliament is a place where a selected few of the students seek to represent the many, I think the first and main important topic is always to get back to your communities and engage with them first in order to understand what's happening for our students and what best needs to be represented for them. Where to the other side, they seek to challenge these sabbaticals and hold them responsible and accountable for what they're doing. They need to make sure this is in relation to what our students need, not a small part of the community, but all of them. So the outreach needs to be good, as well as the set of sending back the information to our students should be just as good and proactive. I'm fairly sure that along emails and long publicly posts and publications, we can look at better functionings into sending the information back to our students for them to understand what's happening, what has been discussed, where are we going forward, and how we can work together into working and to making the student experience better for everyone. And I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandru, for your answer. Now, Mark, how should the president make sure student parliament gets to play an active role in shaping the SU should they become leader next year?
Thanks, Joe. As Kieron alluded to in an earlier question, a couple of years ago I wrote a democratic review, and I did that as union chair when I chaired Parliament. I'm a huge proponent of Parliament. I think it has the possibility to do such fantastic work as our democratically representative body. And I think the way that the SU president needs to ensure that Parliament can shape the SU is by empowering Parliament. We need to absolutely push student parliament elections. I think we need to reform the way we do student parliament elections so that people elected on student parliament, they know what they're doing, but also that they have plans, they have ideas. And I think we need to make sure that they're aware of the role that they're going to have as student parliament reps. I think we also need to provide more training to student parliament reps. I think we need to provide training on how they can reach out to their communities. Student parliament exists so that the Students' Union knows what the different communities at Essex are thinking and what they're saying. And I think it's absolutely vital that the communities that are represented at Parliament are actually represented because their representatives are going out to them and listening to them. So I think we need to do a huge amount of outreach training with our Parliament reps. I think that there's a huge amount of work that's already been done on empowering Parliament. One of the things that was in my democratic review was bringing our parliaments together. So before we had a Colchester, Southend and a Loughton Parliament, they all sat separately, they didn't communicate. But we changed that this year. They sit together, they make decisions together, and they do break off and they do discuss specific campus things, but they can make a decision together on things that affect the entire union. And I think it's absolutely vital that we continue that work to ensure all campuses are represented and that Parliament is empowered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Now, Kieron, how should the President make sure the Student Parliament gets to play an active role in shaping the SU should they become elected next year?
Yeah, I think a lot of the other candidates have mentioned this, but SU Parliament is the biggest body of students that is involved in the active day-to-day running of the SU. And I think, as other candidates have said, that giving SU Parliament as much power as is possible within the structure of a students' union. Obviously, there's some limitations. It is a charity, it has a trustee structure, but even then, I think some of the powers vested in the trustees should first and foremost go through student parliament wherever possible. And as people have said, the reps who are in student parliament need to be up to date on what they're doing, what their communities are wanting. But also, I think there's a lot that the SU president can do from a top level view of just making sure that that our marketing shows what our sabbatical officers are doing. And it makes it just much easier for people to be kept to account if all students know what sabbatical officers are up to, rather than the select few gets elected to roles in the SU. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieron, for your answer. Now, the next question you're all going to be answering, and Kieron's going to start answering this one. Why did you choose to run for the president rather than any other sabbatical officer role?
Well, it was mentioned in the one of the previous questions, but it's a lot to do with the fact that the SU president has a significant role in guiding the vision of the SU. The SU is nothing without having some sort of direction, being able to listen to the students. I didn't want to run for any of the other issues that sabbatical officers are responsible for, simply because it's no use changing one little aspect if there's a big overarching issue with democracy in the SU, and the SU president is the most responsible out of any of the sabbatical officers for making sure that the democratic process of the SU are as best as they can be. Being chair of the trustees, obviously big part of that. And yeah, simply being the top of the SU just gives you a bit more visibility in making sure that the issues that are raised are carried across throughout the SU, and to be able to keep account of everything rather than just a small section. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieron, for your answer. Now, Mark, why did you choose to run for the president role rather than any of the other sabbatical officer roles?
So I'm currently in the VP Education, so I guess the question here for me is why did I not rerun for VP Education, and instead I went for president? The reason is I believe the work that we need to do is so much broader. I think that the Students' Union this year has done good work on education. I don't by any means think the work is done, but I think the issues that we're up against right now are so much broader than just education. I talk about, in my vision, I talk about rent, I talk about fees, and I talk about fairness. And fees, yes, could continue the work as VP Education to really push on that. But on fairness and on rent, they're not in the remit of the VP Education. They are so important that we tackle, and they are not things that I'm willing to just throw aside and ignore, because as VP Education, you have a huge workload that is about academic representation, and so you can't do the other things. And I just don't think that it's right for students that these things are ignored.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Now, Samira, why did you choose to run for the president role rather than any of the other sabbatical officer roles?
I feel like the student union needs to be led by a fresh face. There's too much complicity, too much bureaucracy, and someone needs to shake things up, you know. And I feel like we need someone with a strong strategy, forward-thinking head. And partially why I didn't really, some people ask me, why did you not run for VP Education? I'm so passionate about all the different sub roles that we have on offer here at the Student Union, you know, from welfare, from engagement, from being, you know, a level 1 corfball coach, and really stringing onto a sports club that was on threads. Is something that I can see myself with my experience from local authorities, national government, charities that can really help support our sabbatical officers, our SEOs, really push for growth and engagement. And really, I'm very focused on, as I said before, looking at post-COVID and recovery. This year, as the union did well, the union, and I commend the sabbatical officers for really surviving. We're in that survival mode, but we need to come out of it, go towards the light, go towards this recovery. But also, as an SU president, I think it's so important for me when I'm thinking about it was, how can I help the next 4-5 years? How can I help the next 4-5 years of students at the University of Essex from all 3 campuses? How can we help support representation and inclusivity and transparency, frankly, because there isn't enough at that in there. And, you know, I've dealt with things in making organisations transparent. I come again, as before, from a minority group, and growing up in Brent, surrounded by different cultures, the most multicultural borough actually in London. We won the London Borough of Brent thanks to me helping write in the bid. I feel that there's so much I can do and contribute that I would be limited in one position. So that is one of the reasons why I decided to run for SU president.
Thank you, Samira, for your answer. Now, Alexandru, why did you run for the president role rather than any of the other sabbatical officer roles?
Thank you, Joe. So for me, given that I was the elected VP International this year, to give you an in-depth look of what my job is basically all the sabbatical officers in one for our international students. When I'm looking for the welfare and benefits of our international students, their level of education, their ability to engage in opportunity at university to develop, and seek to lead them as well, and offer them the possibility to come to someone and help them with all that might be required. So for me, my best opportunity possible thing was to go for presidency, because I'm a man of vision who saw the opportunity to represent not just the international students, but all of our students at Essex on all 3 campuses. So then I made this educated decision to come into play, because I've also been engaging with a lot of students while I've been doing my education time at the university, both undergrad and postgrad, and have learned a lot and have seen a lot and have seen things change and things that didn't change for a long while now. And I firmly believe then that I can bring this fresh experience and work with our students in university as elected VP, as elected SU president, to make this difference and hopefully bring a better change for them. Somewhere where we have a vision for post-COVID life, somewhere where our students don't have to worry about the next day of tomorrow, somewhere where our students come first.
Thank you, Alexandru, for your answer. Now, the next question for everyone is, what do you believe the SU's relationship should be with the university? Mark, would you like to start us off on this one, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Joe. Honestly, I think the relationship we have with the university needs to be a critical friendship, one where we call them out where things aren't right, and that is, you know, often, but one where we still have a positive relationship. I think a lot of the things the SU is able to achieve, especially with the university, are only possible because we have a positive relationship with the university. Now, I know that there will almost certainly be candidates here, and there'll be students who think that we should be opposing the university at every turn. And the only thing I have to say to them is that if we oppose the university at every single opportunity, we will never get any change for students that means anything. We need to work with the people who we're trying to affect change with. And honestly, we need to support students in the most effective way possible, and we need to have that positive but critical relationship with the university to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Now, Samira, what do you believe the SU's role should be with the university?
We need a different type of relationship, something that's working and that's student focused. And I feel like sometimes, specifically with our universities and our institutions, it's not student focused. Students are not at the heart of it, and that needs to change, and that needs to be done with a leader that is willing to represent. And I agree that, you know, change can come with working with the university, but you've got to hold them to account when needed. We're essentially paying customers and we're not getting what we're paying for. You know, people are coming from all over the world. So yes, I agree that we need a working relationship where we don't keep them sweet enough. You know, you've got to stand your ground. We've got to be the rebels that the student union promotes on their website and who we are, what we were 5 years ago. But you've got to be able to have someone to hold them to account. So yes, I agree with having a working relationship, but also coming to certain compromises, but not willing to back down on student issues that students are consistently coming to.
Thank you, Samira, for your answer. Now, Alexandru, what do you believe the SU's relationship should be with the university?
So to answer this frankly, this year has taught me that a relationship with the university can be beneficial at times, but can also not be so good. It's a dependent whether or not we keep into perspective, are the students the main priority or is the business functioning? Now, of course, for many of you wondering, the university is also asking to be a business. They need to survive and the university needs to exist in order to provide what it seeks to provide for our students. But as to that, they also need to be accountable for, as my other colleague said as well, and ensure that students are well represented. So then our relationship should be a mutual beneficial one where we seek to help each other and not hinder one another. I would then consider that the way we tackle our relationship with the universities, one where we seek to challenge things that we firmly believe, and our students, first of all, come to us and tell us needs to be answered for, such as what has happened this year, possibly with the fees, possibly accommodations, things which, if not necessarily dependent to the university, at least joining forces with them into seeking a higher representation, somewhere where our students can be heard, not a place where we get stuck and speak with a wall and then nothing moves forward. So then we must make sure our relationship with the university is a healthy one, also a proactive one.
Thank you, Alexandru, for your answer. Now, Kieron, what do you believe the SU's relationship should be with the university?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what a lot of people have just mentioned, that I don't think anyone's really wanting an antagonistic relationship with the university. That's not what we're about. The university is the body that gives us our education. If we didn't think the university fundamentally had our interests at heart, we wouldn't have come here. But I think that sometimes the issues that the SU tackles the university on are issues that it knows that the university already agrees with them on. So they get to publicize that, oh yeah, we've made big changes, but realistically, the university is going to always do it anyway. Also, extending a little bit beyond the question, I think the way that we work with the university needs to change a little bit, because with the SPAC officers, obviously there's a natural tendency to go to the big figures in the SU, the vice chancellor, etc. But also, we need to start working more individually with the teams that work within the SU and the university, to make sure that the stuff that they do, which fundamentally is what gets passed as policy in the end, that we're part of every part of the process of policies that get made within those departments, and then those that pass Senate in the future. Because if we can't work well with these teams, there's not really much point. Working solely with the bigwigs in the university ultimately just means that things are going to get delayed when the real action can be taken lower down the organisation of the university. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieron, for your answer. Now, the next question for you all is, how do you believe the role of the SU president should support students, especially estranged students, in a time like this? Samira, would you like to start us off, please?
Sure. I feel for me as an estranged student myself, it was worrying coming into university, you know, not having the financial backing. So I think the first thing I'm going to say is that if elected as SU president, to really continue the hardship and the bursary funds, but also working with national government to promote universities, to promote apprenticeships within our schools and within our education for higher education. I feel part of it is, again, back to this whole consultation thing, discussing with groups, you know, having those weekly meetings, because some people are not aware what estranged students are, you know, our academic staff are not aware. There are things, for example, the digital gap, that estranged students don't have the finances to buy maybe a good laptop and have Wi-Fi. Estranged students that are computer science undergraduates, for example, maybe needing 2 monitors but don't have the financial backing. There are so many things, and I feel common with support is being able to raise awareness within our campus, having those wellbeing services to provide them, but also to support them with employability skills. How do we support you after your higher education? Where do you go from here? working with local authorities and actually working with Colchester, the Borough of Colchester, to see what services are out there to support those types of students. But to remind them that no matter your background, there is something for you. You do have a purpose. And I feel like higher education is the last step for supporting them until they go into the working world.
Thank you, Samira, for your answer. Now, Kieron, would you like to answer next? How do you believe the role of SU president should support students, especially estranged students, in a time like this?
I think that a lot of the issues that estranged students face, I can't speak as one of myself, that they're just not supported well enough, as Samira, as someone from that community has said. And I think it's not just an issue that affects estranged students, but other marginalised communities as well, like marginalised communities, which we have many of at the university, are also more likely to come from low income families and need the support that they may not have gotten at school in deprived areas. And the funds through the hardship scheme that have been extended this year, they were expanded from previous years, and I think that's something that needs to continue. And just as SU president, it's encouraging a culture within the SU, as I mentioned earlier, of making sure that people come to you for support, and that they need to have the confidence that if they come to you or any of the sabbatical team, or indeed any member of the SU, that if they come to you with an issue, that will get dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieron, for your answer. Alexandru, would you like to go next? How do you believe the role of SU president should support students, especially estranged students, in a time like this?
Thank you, Tom. So it's difficult because I feel for everybody is different, especially in these times. But I myself identify as an estranged student, where my first experience at Essex started with me being one day earlier to the fun, not being able to grab my keys and sleeping my first night in Sub-Zero. I still got the experience of meeting amazing people who helped guide my way through the university. To that and for them, I'm also doing and believing this way. I want to have open doors for those who feel inspired and join us at this university, and know that not just the student union would be there for them to help and guide them, but myself as well. And for them to always, I would look to always build up this confidence for them to approach myself, even as president. And if possible, allow me to at least give them the tour of the university and show them just how many opportunities are there for them, and hopefully make friends. I'm also confident that we can then further reach our work with the university in order to provide more availability and possibilities to students. They're coming from different backgrounds with different necessities, and a lot of figures and stuff which can definitely impact them and make them feel strange. Our scopes and objective then is to make sure we are all inclusive and we create the ability and opportunity possible for all of them to join us at Essex with the confidence for a better tomorrow.
Thank you, Alexandru, for your answer. Now, Mark, would you like to go next? How do you believe the role of SU president should support students, especially estranged students, in this time?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think ultimately what's affected a lot of students this year, and I think Samira touched on it as well, especially with estranged students, is financial support. And I think that we need to ensure that there is more financial support available both within the university and the SU. Kieron spoke about extending the hardship funds increase. Completely agree. The hardship fund needs to be larger and needs to be available to more students, so that students can use that support that they really need. I think that we need to have forums and meetings with different communities to find their specific issues. We need to listen, and then we need to push on that issue. We obviously the questions about estranged students, but we also need to provide this kind of support to all the different community groups that we have at Essex. We need to provide direct support to each of these communities. We need to be proactive and reaching out to these communities to find out how we can help, and then what we need to do next, what we need to do more of. And I think as president, a big role for me there would be working with our VP Welfare and our VP Community Engagement in ensuring that these students, especially estranged students, are effectively and properly supported by the whole Students' Union.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Now, the next question is, how do you think next year's SU president should engage with decolonialising the curriculum project? Kieron, would you like to start us off on this one, please?
There's a big issue in universities worldwide, especially ones in European countries and the UK, of presenting the history as being far too white, and that's what the decolonization of the curriculum campaign is all about. And I think what the SU can do to support that is to make sure that the campaign is well supported, that the next VP education for next year is on board, and that they have a cohesive strategy for asking what the SU, the university and the SU can do to work together to reduce this in the curriculum. They also need to speak with our part-time officers who are responsible for speaking to these communities, because colonialization doesn't just affect Black communities, it affects all kinds of communities that have at one point in history been subjugated, and it's a history that needs to be rewritten across the country, and I think Essex can do that really well with the community we have here. Thank you.
Joe, you muted.
Yeah, thank you. Kieron, thank you for your answer. Now, Mark, how do you think next year's SU president should engage with decolonialising the curriculum project?
Thanks, Joe. I mean, the biggest disappointment for me this year has not been having enough time to work on decolonizing curriculum more. What has given me real hope, though, is seeing how many other of our amazing student leaders have put time and energy into supporting the work in decolonizing the curriculum. I think decolonizing the curriculum is absolutely vital work, as when we're learning, we should be learning the truth, not a whitewashed version. It's important, and it's really important, so our curriculum accurately represents not only the world around us, but the diversity on our campuses, and that we aren't just using Western resources, but resources from actually all over the world. I'm really proud of the work that the library is doing with their EDI resources, where they're making available thousands of additional books that aren't normally available to students, so that there is a wider range of resources available to all students, which is a wider source material. Decolonising curriculum isn't just about the university, but it's about breaking down the systemic barriers that exist in our society, and I think it's really important we do tear them down. I believe that decolonising curriculum is one step in tackling racism and discrimination. Racism and discrimination is something that is taught, but it's also something that we can unteach. If we provide a more accurate description of the world around us to the next generation, society will be better for it. Next year, if you elect me as your next president, I'm planning on supporting our VP Education, as Kieron said, but also our VP Community Engagement, our student community officers, and actually any other students who want to be involved in decolonising the curriculum so that it is better and more representative of the world and the community that we have here at Essex. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Now, Alexandru, how do you think next year's SU's president should engage with decolonialising the curriculum project?
Thank you, Joe. So I firmly believe there are precious lessons to be learned in history, and it is now our time to carry on this fight and show that there's certain stuff which can, as Mark said as well, be re-educated. Whereas we tackle to fight for the abolishing of racism and its demeanors in society, we also need to come together, and that's where myself, should I be elected as president, will do work with my fellow sabbatical officers in order to raise our voices for the ones who are seeking to fight, and with the ones who are seeking to fight against for the decolonizing of the curriculum. First of all, as well as ensuring that the university itself is doing an amazing job into answering this problem and actively seeking solutions into bringing the lessons from the past, but not its mediocrity to what happened at the time, and understanding that we're all different, and different backgrounds does not mean different treatment. We should all be equal, and we should all fight for that.
Thank you, Alexandru, for your answer. Now, Samira, how do you think next year's SU's president should engage with decolonialising the curriculum project?
I think this is such an important question. I'm glad someone has raised this, because 1 month celebrating Black history is not enough, frankly. And when it comes to decolonising the curriculum, we need to ensure that the steering groups that we currently have continue, but we're involving more students within it. There are so many networks and so many connections that we have on campus within our students, but partially I think to use those, and we need a safe environment and we need procedures. And I come back always to procedures, because if students don't feel supported during, for example, a process of reporting something and beyond after, no one's going to report it. No one's going to want to have those discussions. But I think it's also important that we engage different types of communities within it and actually understand that when it comes to decolonising the curriculum, what other ways, it's not just teaching, there's different things we could do, you know, book clubs. I remember in my second year, they were doing an amazing job, but that fell in my third year. I didn't hear about it and it was still as important. Frankly, more needs to be done. And then with an SU president, you need someone who's committed, you know, to supporting the steering groups, committed to holding universities to account, also committed to having those taboo discussions and those difficult discussions, but holding university and students to account and tackling systematic racism. And nationally, you know, working with other student unions, what can we do as UK universities to improve? Because there are schools, there are secondary schools that are currently doing, what can we learn from other higher educations? I think it's so important to have best practice, especially when it comes to something as important as decolonising the curriculum.
Thank you, Samira, for your answer. Now, the next question you're all going to be answering is: some societies feel let down by some candidates as they have only approached them for the first time for the purpose of endorsements when they have not been actively engaged with them before. How can societies and student groups be sure that candidates will continue to engage with them after elections and not just during campaigning? Mark, would you like to start us off on this one, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's disappointing that candidates might be reaching out just to talk about how they can promote their own campaign. I think that it's difficult for societies to take anything anyone says. I think anything we say here has to be taken with a pinch of salt. But I think it's really important that our next president does continue to engage with all the societies and all the sports teams that we have at Essex. I think that it's absolutely vital that they work with the VP student experience to ensure that the needs of the societies and sports teams are being met. And I can't make any promises. I can't say I'm not going to do this because the election process means I can't. But it's really disappointing that you feel that candidates are doing this, and I think it's really important that we do as a students' union and as candidates ensure that we do continue to engage and ensure that societies feel supported, because they do fantastic work. They are the cornerstone of what we are able to provide as an experience for so many students, including myself. And I just think it's really disappointing to hear that.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. Now, Kieron, some societies feel let down by some candidates if they have only just been approached for endorsements and they have not actively engaged with them before. How can societies and students be sure that the candidates will continue to engage with them after the elections and not just during the campaigning?
Yeah, I can only speak for myself on this one, but I have purposely reached out to societies that I have been involved with my entire time here at Essex, and I think reaching out to a society that you haven't met before entirely defeats the object of endorsement. Endorsement is meant to mean that the people who run this society or the people in that society are people who trust your judgment and people who know you and know that you have the best interest of the student union at heart. I'd like to echo what Mark said about working with the VP student experience to make sure that societies are well engaged with and sports teams are well engaged with. And I don't want to make any commitments either because it's against the rules, but I think if the SU can have any look into giving more funding to societies, it should, and it's something that I'd like to see happen, whether or not I end up being president next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieron, for your answer. Now, Samira, some societies feel let down by some candidates if they have only just been approached for the first time for the purpose of endorsements when they have not actively engaged with them before. How can societies and student groups be sure that candidates will continue to engage with them after the elections and not just during campaigning?
Personally, if I was still vice president of Call 4, I would have politely replied, thank you and good luck with your campaign. You don't need to endorse any candidates. And rightly so, you know, it is difficult. I feel, especially with this election, the fact that it's all digital, we hadn't had the chance to see them in person and attend meetings. But I think one way you can do is remember that they're elected by you, for you. Hold them to account, whoever is elected. And if they're not connecting with you, and if they've just disappeared and don't care about you, let them know. You know, you have all different sabbatical offices that you can also reach out to. But it's showing that we're accessible to our societies, we're accessible to our clubs, but we're accessible to all different types of students, whether you are part of a sports club or you're part of society, you're a student at the University of Essex. But I think this is mainly goes to the fact that we have two other campuses that some people actually do forget about, East 15 and Southend. How can they also interact with different societies on Colchester campus? One thing I thought of about freshers is how come there wasn't like a coach that took people from East 15 and Southend to Colchester to utilise the services that we have, even though Colchester is the biggest campus that we have, we still have other two. So I do understand where it can feel to be disengaged, but remember, they're elected by you, for you, so hold them to account. But personally, as president, if elected, we're just to ensure that consistent report with those communities and those societies and those clubs, turning up and supporting them on what they're doing and their events, and using different social media platforms that the SU have and my personal platform to support them.
Thank you, Samira, for your answer. Now, Alexandru, some societies feel let down by some candidates as they have only just been approached for the first time for the purpose of endorsements when they have not actively engaged with them before. How can societies and students groups be sure that candidates will continue to engage with them after the elections and not just during campaigning?
Thank you, Joe. So with my work that I've done this year, I think I've faintly managed to see just how important the connection with societies and sports clubs and volunteering activities are vital to our student experience and their trust and belief in the representation we seek to offer them. Same to that, I've also built my campaign around hearing our students and putting them first. My main idea and desire is to give everyone a voice. Whether or not it's possible to reach everyone, I don't know, but there's definitely a possibility to reach the leader representatives of these communities, societies, sports clubs, for them to hopefully speak for the bigger groups that are engaged with them. I'm sad to hear that this was the case this year, but if anything, to echo some of the things that my other fellow participants said, do have the confidence to hold them accountable. It's not a case where you should let yourself feel used. You are the ones who bring the life in our university and make the most engaging stuff, which allow the students to experience being an Essex student. And for that as well, you should put value to that and always challenge when you feel like you're not being represented or you're only being approached for something that doesn't bring value to you as well. So then make sure that candidates that choose to approach you are being held accountable. Don't be afraid to raise up your voices and say what you have to say. As much as I will work with the fellow sabbatical officers in order to ensure the level of engagement with our communities does not dissipate after the campaigns. Continuously, even today, I had discussions where I've said, based on the things that I found out during my campaign, that it is important to reach out to our students, at least to ask them how they're doing. Make sure the engagement is good and make sure there is ways we can further help them with the things they're currently dealing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandru, for your answer. And that was the last question we had time to answer today. But if you feel like you've got more questions for our candidates, or if there's things on your mind, issues you want to raise, don't forget to reach out to the candidates directly and use your voice to talk to them and have that open conversation. I'm sure all of the candidates will be available on social media or elsewhere to answer any questions you might have. Now, each candidate now has 1 minute to explain why people should vote for them. Kieron, would you like to start us off, please?
Yeah, of course. To summarise why I'm running for SU president, I'm running to ensure that the SU can be the rebellious activist organisation that it was once known for. I have a significant amount of experience in leading organisations that achieve their goals, and I have the skills to lead this organisation over the next year. beyond that, and beyond my own campaign, I want to remind the electorate that they have options when voting. It's an STV election, which means you can rank candidates. You don't just have to vote for one. You can also opt to reopen nominations if you don't think any of the candidates are something that you agree with. I'd encourage all voters to consider all candidates carefully and to vote for a candidate who'll stand up for democracy. And last but not least, vote Kieron Franks for SU president to make the SU work for you.
Thank you, Kieron. Mark, would you like to go next, please?
Thanks, Joe. You should vote for me because I have everything the role of president needs. I have a great deal of experience with the Students' Union and the university, from currently leading the union on our educational mission to ensuring the university hears and listens to our student voice. I have a vision of a union, one that puts its representational mission first, one that fights the marketisation of education and doesn't give up that fight, one that challenges landlords who profit at our expense. It's a vision of a better union. So mark your ballot with a vote for Mark for SU president. Let's build a better union together.
Thank you, Mark, for your pitch. Alexandru, would you like to go next, please?
Yes, thank you, Joe. So first of all, guys, if you have the possibility to vote, please do. Even if you're not here next year, you have to vote because this is your power and you should use it. And if you choose to do it, then please consider voting for me. I aim to work hard and to do what I said I will do in order to restore your faith in our union and work with you in representing your needs. I'll also ensure to not be dehumanized should I be elected and be forever a present figure which will seek to listen to you and to represent your best interests. Now, guided by my love for our members and passion to make a difference, I will be resilient in my fight to prioritize our students with every occasion and lead a union where students come first. So vote for Alex to be your next SU president, and together we can start mending the connection and give you something to believe in.
Thank you for your pitch, Alex. Samira, would you like to go next, please?
We need a new direction, we need a new fresh face, and we need to kick this uni up we need someone who's willing to, push for inclusivity, diversity, and transparency. A vote for me, someone is a vote for experience with national government, local authorities, charities, but someone who's there for you, wanting to be your voice, represent you on the levels, and really make sure that we are representative and inclusive and really unite all three campuses together. This is one of the most important elections, I feel, looking post-COVID, but make sure that you go out and vote, research the candidates and use your democratic right to vote. We need a new, revived, democratic and transparent university. And I want to be that for you. So on March the 10th, please do vote Samira, someone who's pushing for inclusivity, diversity and transparency.
Thank you, Samira. Thank you to all the candidates for attending here today. Now, voting opens on the 10th at 10 a.m. and closes on the 12th. Please do research, please do vote, and do remember that there is another candidate, there's another option, and that is to reopen the nominations, but do not forget to vote. Please come along. Please, thank you for coming. Thank you to all the team for putting this together. Thank you for all the candidates coming here today, and thank you for attending. Thank you for your questions. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, if you want to engage with the candidates further, they're available to do so, but don't forget to vote. I'm Joe Holmes, presenting on behalf of Rebel and the SU. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Joe.